Highlands by the end of the day. Some rain in Edinburgh for the Calcutta Cup. It should be easing off by the time we get to kick-off. But across northern Scotland, we will see snow showers returning here and, again, likely to cause some disruption as they last through Saturday night and Sunday. A Met Office yellow warning in place here. Elsewhere, further south, mostly outbreaks of rain that we see, keeping the temperatures up through Saturday night and Sunday, but making for a very different day across the south. Certainly early on, dull and damp. Rain tending to peter out, brighter skies developing through the afternoon. But it's going to stay windy throughout the day, and those windy conditions bringing further snow showers across northern Scotland and turning more wintry the showers over northern England through the day. Another cold day here. Further south it'll be mild, but feeling colder with the wind.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Fridays, Saturdays and Sunday afternoons here on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as my panel and I take on some of the top stories hitting the headlines.
You can look up the statistics.
No, you look it up. I hug everyone I
Oh!
We learn from it and try and move on. That's it. Opinion is at the heart of the show. It's a place for open and frank conversation, but without the fear of cancellation. So join me here on GB News on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons between 4 and 6 p.m.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Before we get started, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Polly Middlehurst with your latest news headlines. And the Conservative MP Aaron Bell has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. In a letter to Sir Graham Brady, he states he struggled to reconcile assurances that Boris Johnson gave to him around the findings of the Sue Gray report. He said the gatherings held in Number 10 breached trust, and that makes his position untenable. According to The Spectator, 12 MPs have now submitted letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister. Well, Downing Street says the departure of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Principal Private Secretary and Director of Communications had been agreed before it happened yesterday. Boris Johnson reportedly told Downing Street staff that all change is good. It comes after reports a fifth advisor, Eleni Narazansky, resigned just hours after 3 senior aides quit. Policy Chief Munira Mirza also resigned yesterday. She cited Mr Johnson's refusal to withdraw his claim that Sir Keir Starmer had failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile for child sex offences during his time as DPP. Speaking in the media in London, Health Secretary Sajid Javid distanced himself from the attack on the Labour leader.
I think Keir Starmer, when he was running the DPP, did a good job, and he should be respected for it. It's a tough job, and he deserves absolute respect for that. But the Prime Minister has also come out and he's clarified those remarks, and that's important.
Sajid Javid. The boss of one of the UK's big 6 energy companies has told the government to focus on getting the UK off the gas grid and invest in energy efficiency. E.ON's boss added that would also reduce people's fuel bills. It follows Ofgem's announcement yesterday that energy prices will soar by 54% from April the 1st, the hike affecting 22 million households and adding around £700 to annual bills. The Fuel Poverty Action Group has criticised the government proposals, calling the increases disastrous.
There's a lot of nonsense being put out by people who are heavily invested in gas and oil and really don't want to see the change. There is a huge amount that other countries are doing, and some of them are in a much better position as a result.
An order to stop Brexit checks at Northern Ireland's ports has been suspended by a High Court judge in Belfast. The order was put in place by the Agriculture Minister, Edwin Poots, but is believed the move may have breached international law. The interim suspension will be in place until there's a judicial review into the DUP minister's decision. The move has meant Stormont's executive can no longer meet and is unable to take significant policy decisions, with the DUP First Minister Paul Givan stepping down last night over the disruption to the Northern Ireland Protocol. The former peer, Lord Nazir Ahmed, has been jailed for 5 years and 6 months for the attempted rape of a young girl and sexually assaulting a boy in the 1970s. Although the 64-year-old resigned from the House of Lords, he retains the title Lord Ahmed of Rotherham. He was found guilty at Sheffield Crown Court in January and has been jailed at the same court today. International news, and China and Russia have announced a new deep strategic alliance as China's President Xi Jinping hosts Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the opening day of the Beijing Winter Olympics. In a joint statement, the two countries declared their new relationship was superior to any political or military alliance of the Cold War era. The Russian leader's visit to China comes amid growing Chinese support for Moscow in its dispute with Ukraine, one that threatens to break out into armed conflict. Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton told GBNews that Putin and Xi Jinping recognise the weakness of the Biden administration.
This tendency of the Russians and the Chinese to work more closely together has been evident for a long time in the UN Security Council, for example. Whenever you try and go after North Korea's nuclear weapons program, China protects North Korea with Russian support. When you go after Iran's nuclear weapons program, Russia protects Iran with China's support. It would be in the interest of the West to prevent that closeness from developing any further, but it's very hard to see how to do that.
John Bolton. Austria has become the first European country to impose a vaccine mandate on its adult citizens. The country's president signed the controversial measure into law this morning. It'll be introduced in phases, with people who haven't yet been jabbed given a month to comply. From mid-March, police will start conducting random vaccine status checks and issuing fines. A third phase would see the government able to issue automatic penalties through a vaccination registry, though no date has yet been set for this. You're with GB News, more news as it happens, but now let's join Nana Akua.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, why are the government so obsessed with net zero? I mean, this is the biggest cost of living crisis I can remember in my lifetime, and I've been around for half a century. And this government is adamant on a net zero agenda, which I think, judging by the measures they've announced, must actually refer to the amount of money that we, the public, will net once they've secured this ludicrous policy, zero. Chancellor Rishi Sunak announced a range of measures which, in my mind, seem somewhat naive. I mean, let's have a look at some of them. £150 off council tax if you're in bands A to D. Unfortunately, he's missed the point because most people who he's targeting already don't pay council tax. A loan of £200 to prop up the energy bills, which, as we all know, the problem with the loan is that it has to be paid back. But they've thought about that because over 5 years you'll pay it then. But even so, this loan doesn't kick in until October, when the energy price cap is set again, so the cap may be set even higher, so £200 won't do anything. Rishi said, higher energy prices is something we're going to have to adjust to in common with other countries around the world, and it would be wrong to pretend otherwise, and that it is not sustainable to keep energy bills artificially low. Great. So in the meantime, he's giving loans to energy companies who will apparently in turn reduce the cost of energy to the consumer. Don't make me laugh. This will be like when we propped up the banks. I mean, yesterday, Shell announced increased profits of almost £20 billion. Perhaps he could ask them to pass some of that on instead of taxing us. He's also planning to keep the green levy, which adds £153 on average to your bill, and he's raised interest rates by 0.5%, thereby strangling the purse strings of you and I, which means that we are less likely to go out and spend money, which will result in a slowdown of our economy. And on top of all of that, they are still pursuing their ideological harebrained scheme of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And one of the biggest impacts being that we will be forced to give up our petrol and diesel engines and subscribe to this electric dream. Even as early as 2019, the IFS were warning that the government's pledge that the UK would reach net zero by 2050 would mean that the tax take from petrol and diesel would shrink to nothing over the coming decades, and a new way to raise money from drivers was needed. By 2028, the RAC Foundation suggested that the government would lose about £5 billion of revenue because of this, money that is used to enhance motorways and roads. Electric cars don't pay road tax, congestion or green zone taxes, and currently VAT on domestic electric is only at 5%, whereas on the pumps it's at 20%, and most will be charging at home. All that revenue will be lost. And to recoup the cash, there's a load of talk about pricing schemes like pay per mile or pay for time. I mean, how long is a piece of string? These sound very intrusive measures. They will mean that they will know where you are and for how long. That money will have to come from somewhere, and if it's anything like these current plans, if you end up netting zero, count yourself lucky. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Focus this Friday at 5. Do clean air zones work? Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the proposed scheme to cut emissions in Greater Manchester is completely unworkable, blaming the Labour Mayor Andy Burnham. Similar schemes which see some vehicles face daily charges are already in place in London, in Birmingham and in Bath. And I'll be speaking to the Labour MP for Blackley and Broughton in Manchester to find out his thoughts. The Great British Debate this hour. Are things going from bad to worse for Boris Johnson? Within the last hour, Conservative MP Aaron Bell has submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister, taking the total of letters now up to 17. It follows a wave of resignations at number 10 within the last 24 hours. So I'm asking, with an increase in letters of number 10's confidence and 5 resignations in just 24 hours, could this mark the end for Boris Johnson? And within the next decade, could you be heading to a pharmacy to have liposuction, breast implants, or even to have a baby? That's what one private firm is hoping to offer. We'll discuss that before 5. Join me in the debate. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email GBViews at gbnews.uk, or why not tweet me at GBNews. Right, let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and broadcaster Danny Kelly. All right, first, hello, welcome, guys. Good to see you.
Hiya.
Now, I've got to ask Danny straight away because we know how he's not a used car salesperson.
Used car dealer?
That's right, a dealer. Same difference.
I employ salespeople.
Same difference. So, first of all, though, net zero, it's this wonderful idea, this concept that we will all be floating around in these fabulous electric cars, silently, of course, emitting no greenhouse gases at all, and they will hopefully go for long distances.
Well, look, technology's getting better. I wouldn't touch one with a barge pole, a second-hand electric car. There's no appetite from my customers. This net zero thing, it's become almost an ideological force now amongst the government. And I really do wish that in the 2019 election, he put that on his manifesto, that we are going to, if you like, push for a net zero. It's going to have this much of an impact. You're going to be paying this much towards your energy bills, which is going to offset green technology. Because I can guarantee you, I don't think he'd have won the election with an 81 or 82 seat majority, because the average man on the street, the average man and woman on the street, they're worried about here and now. You know, this country is responsible for 1% of the world's CO2, yet we are disproportionately charging people more for this. We're bringing gas in. We're an island, and we enjoy lots of natural fuel, lots of natural gas and oil. And I just think it's a shame, you know, £600-700 extra a year. Now, I can afford it, but there'll be people watching this telly right now, watching GB News, who cannot afford it. And I think they would feel let down that they weren't consulted about this 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, the net zero agenda, I mean, whilst it's great, I mean, it sounds like something that would have been on the Green Party manifesto, to be honest. But, Claire, you're an ex-advisor for the Conservative Party. Come on, then, what do you think of this?
I think there are some laudable aspects to it, and I think that we all do our bit with recycling, looking at how we can reduce journeys, etc. So, you know, I can see that that is a really good idea. But, as Danny's just said, where is the appetite for electric cars? So I've looked into them, and they are really expensive to buy brand new. And also, where are the charging facilities?
Yeah.
Because unless you have that infrastructure in place, then there's no point saying to everybody you need to get rid of your petrol or diesel vehicle and have one of these if you can't charge it. Not everywhere has a driveway, there aren't lampposts. I live in a village where it is extremely difficult to put these charging posts in. So I think until we have that sorted out, you can't really push forward with that agenda.
Well, and then let's just imagine and we're going to have to use a lot of imagination, that they've actually managed to do all this and they've got all the charging points and all of that going on. We now have to understand that the money that they would have collected from us in terms of the fuel duties at 20%, and currently if you charge at home, it's only a 5% VAT duty. So if you charge at a pump with the electric, it's also 20% like the pumps. But most people, if this works, and we don't all have blackouts because we're all charging at exactly the same time, but let's just try and imagine a state where this does work. And then we've charged up our cars and we're ready to go. The government then think, well, we need to make some more money out of you lot because we've lost all that revenue. Now we need to charge you per mile on the road.
That's right. And, you know, I look at these kind of schemes and on paper it looks brilliant. But how are you going to police this? Are you having cameras on every single road? Is it only on motorways? Is it only on major A roads? Because the cameras and that kind of facility that you would need is enormous.
Well, they'd track you, wouldn't they? So you could even be worked in with your mobile phone or a tracker into your car, so they'll know exactly
and that's where I
you are.
have an issue, and it's that kind of sort of civil liberty side of me that comes out. I don't have a problem with ANPR cameras looking out for people behaving badly, stolen cars and all the rest of it. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is somebody tracking my every single move. Now, I know that I walk through the streets and I'm on camera. I know that my mobile phone will be tracked because of GPS coordinates, and I understand
you can switch that off.
You can, and that's my choice to have that switched on. Whereas if it is in my car and somebody is working out exactly where I've been and for how long, well, no, I'm sorry, that does really cross a line.
See, this is the problem with it. Whilst this wonderful, laudable aim of going green, and you see I've gone green today, but it's a wonderful, laudable aim, isn't it? But let's be real about it. We need to have the conversation as to where are the government going to get the revenue that they lose.
Lord Frost, in his resignation letter, wrote down 3 or 4 reasons, one of which was the net zero ambition. And I go back to my earlier position, I genuinely think he's not reading the room on this. That if he goes, let's hypothesise, let's go to Blackpool where Nigel Farage was last night, a red wall, and I think it went Conservative various constituencies in the Blackpool area. I think if you were to ask them, OK, let's get Brexit done, and he got Brexit done. But then he's going to slip something in that's going to cost them potentially another £700 or £800 a year, and that's what you're voting for. I think people will feel betrayed by Boris Johnson. I really do. I think he is just so determined. The guy's incorrigible. You can't change his mind about net zero. I think, and maybe, Claire, you know the guy, I think his legacy, and this was before the recent months, I think he wants his legacy to be the man who created and achieved net zero.
I don't, actually. I don't think that. I think he wants his legacy to be Brexit. And, you know, that's fair enough, and that's what he's always campaigned upon. I think the net zero has crept in and is now taking over. What he thought was going to be really easy, let's, look at the environment, let's look at animals, let's look at, seas and oceans, and didn't look at the detail behind it. And I think there is the real problem, is that no one told him what the detail of all of these policies would be.
And even when you do look at the detail, and I mean, I do love looking at detail on these. I know Boris isn't a detail man, but it's quite simple. It's quite easy to see that you're going to lose a certain amount of revenue from these schemes, and you're going to have to find a place where you're going to get that money from, and it's obviously going to come from us. So, what's next?
£35 billion will the shortfall be by 2040, they estimate, because there's no fuel duty, the road tax. And why electric cars? Why do they not need to pay road tax at the moment?
Well,
why? They drive on the same roads that I drive on.
Well, pay per mile is what... So what are your thoughts then, Danny? Because you've not mentioned it. Pay per mile.
Pay per mile.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it would depend. The car that I've driven down to London in today has probably killed about 40 trees on the way down. It costs £600 to tax a year. It does 18 miles to the gallon. 18 miles to the gallon.
You might have to stick a petrol pump on your back.
So I don't know. I mean, it's probably cost me £60, £70 the return trip today. How much would that cost me per mile in a BMW M5 in the future? Maybe it's going to be less. Maybe it's going to be cheaper per mile. It might be.
But the problem is then everybody then pays exactly the same irrespective, although I think this whole idea will take into account how green your car is, but then it will ultimately benefit the people who probably can afford a better, more efficient car, so you'll end up paying less, whereas somebody who doesn't have as efficient car, but it is still a green car, will probably pay more, and those people are more like the ones be doing most of the miles. So it just doesn't...
And also, with technology, people will find a way around it. They'll be able to block the GPS. Of course they will.
Well,
They'll probably buy them on eBay already, 50 quid jammers. I bet you. GPS blockers.
Don't get me excited. I'm thinking about that. No, I'm joking. I would never do that, obviously, but that's not in existence yet, but I suspect it will be. If you've just joined us, where have you been? This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're online on TV and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has faced 5 resignations from Number 10 within the last 24 hours. Most notably, his policy aide, Munira Murza, who you've probably never heard of until, well, yesterday. She quit over the Prime Minister's false claim that Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute serial sex offender Jimmy Savile, although he did explain what he actually meant by that. And to make things worse, this afternoon, Conservative MP Aaron Bell submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister, taking the known number of MPs to do so to 17. So I'm asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? Send me your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. Tweet us at GBNews. There's a poll up right now asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? Cast your vote now, but first, it's the weather.
Hello again. It's going to be a windy weekend for all, and for some, a wintry weekend, particularly in Scotland, where we will see further snow showers. Elsewhere, we're more likely to see outbreaks of rain. This weather front introduced the colder air that you've probably noticed through the day today. More weather fronts are approaching. They will spread outbreaks of rain across the country tomorrow. But in between, Many places becoming dry overnight. We do still have snow showers coming into western Scotland. However, the snow could build up here over some of the higher routes and potentially cause a little bit of disruption. The snow showers will ease across the hills of northwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland as outbreaks of rain trickle back into here and western Scotland by dawn. Temperatures dropping close to freezing, but there's enough of a wind to stop those temperatures falling too far. Certainly a touch of frost likely, though, in rural areas, but a dry and a bright start for much of the Midlands, southern England, sunny spells here, but grey and damp for northwest England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, with some more snow here, even to lower levels for a time. That rain will be heavy as it pushes into northwest England, North Wales during the afternoon, patchy rain over the Midlands by the end of the day. Some rain in Edinburgh for the Calcutta Cup. It should be easing off by the time we get to kick-off, but across northern Scotland we will see snow showers returning here and again likely to cause some disruption as they last through Saturday night and Sunday. A Met Office yellow warning in place here. Elsewhere, further south, mostly outbreaks of rain that we see, keeping the temperatures up through Saturday night and Sunday, but making for a very different day across the south. Certainly early on, dull and damp. Rain tending to peter out, brighter skies developing through the afternoon. But it's going to stay windy throughout the day, and those windy conditions bringing further snow showers across northern Scotland and turning more wintry the showers over northern England through the day. Another cold day here. Further south it'll be mild, but feeling colder with the wind.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 25 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Now, it's so many things happening here in politics. It's a very exciting time, a very interesting one at that. But right now it's time for the Great British Debate. And this hour I'm asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? Just as the Prime Minister thought he could move forward with his policy, he's faced a wave of resignations within Number 10 over the last 24 hours. 5 of his senior advisors and Downing Street staff have quit. Most notably, his policy aide, Munira Mirza, who quit over the Prime Minister's false claim that Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute serial sex offender Jimmy Savile, although he did explain how he meant it. And if things couldn't get worse, even the Chancellor Rishi Sunak seemed reluctant to defend the comments.
Being honest, I wouldn't have said it, and I'm glad that the Prime Minister clarified what he meant.
And if things look like they couldn't get any worse this afternoon, Conservative MP Aaron Bell says that he has submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister to Sir Graham Brady. That's posting on Twitter. Bell, who criticised Boris Johnson over lockdown parties in the Commons earlier this week, said the breach of trust over the number 10 rule breaking and how it had been handled made the Prime Minister's position untenable. And it's now believed that Conservative MPs, quite a few, the mid-teens, around about that number, nobody really knows, have submitted letters of no confidence. But at least 54 need to write to Sir Graham to trigger the vote of no confidence to challenge the Prime Minister's leadership of the party. So for my Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? I'm joined by Conservative writer and political commentator Joanne Nadler, who also used to advise the Conservative Party. Joanne, it doesn't look good for the Prime Minister at all, does it?
It really doesn't look good for him, Nana. You're absolutely right. It's very difficult to see how he moves on from this. We're in a situation now where, as you've said, a number of Conservative MPs have submitted their motions of no confidence. Frankly, if it's only in the teens, then I think he could take some comfort from that because there's a way to go before you get to that 54. But a pressing problem for him now is how does he populate number 10 and who does he populate it with? There really is a sense that people are deserting a sinking ship. And to find people of the right calibre who are that talented, who are that available, who want to go into what would appear to be a very toxic atmosphere at the moment in the middle of a police investigation, I mean, that's a tall order, frankly.
Well, what would you be advising him to do if you were there now and you were his advisor? I mean, he needs one anyway, so if you are looking for work, you could probably get the job.
Well, I mean, it may be a bit out there, but I mean, I'm toying with the prospect of advising him as we sit here now to call that vote of confidence himself. I mean, the Conservative Party needs to go through some kind of process to draw a line under this. And I'm not being completely flippant because the problem for MPs, I think, is, and for people that have got to go out and campaign for the party in the run-up to local elections, big local elections this year in May, is when is this going to stop? You know, there's been a sense of one thing after another, perhaps some of them have been more significant than others, but it's this relentless drip, drip, drip. And that is really what did for John Major's government back in the 90s, where, you know, you had various different scandals and various different exposés. And in the end, there was just this terrible sense amongst the general public of complete fatigue with the government. They just didn't want to hear anything more from the Conservative Party, which they felt it was corrupt, but also more importantly, they just felt it was completely inept. And I think this is Boris Johnson's challenge. How on earth does he convince his party and the wider public that he is in charge and that he knows what he's in charge of? You started the programme with this very powerful monologue about all the sort of policy failings, how he had really let people down, particularly in the Red Wall, with the sort of things he'd promised to them and which he clearly hasn't delivered. He's gone off in another direction altogether. And I think I suspect that is the real reason why Munira Mirza has gone. And you know, this is a huge agenda for him to tackle.
Now, if you, as you're saying, he should call it and get them to do it, because if he calls it, then haven't they got don't they have, once they've done it, can they, if he then wins, they can't then try and do this again?
Well, I mean, under the current Conservative constitution, that's right. You know, he would then be in place for a year, and there'd be a little bit of breathing space for him to try to pull this operation back together. I mean, I think people really want to know, does he want the job? We're hearing a lot of briefing from his office, and you know, we're hearing briefing that coming from supporters of Boris Johnson that he's hungry, that he wants this job. But you kind of get the sense that he may be hungry to hang on in power, but what does he want to do with it?
But who've they got, though? Because, OK, it's all very well then saying... Because for me, just from where I am, from my perspective, it seems to me it's a bit irresponsible in the sense that they're doing this right now. We've got potential war. China and Russia seem to be merging forces. The Russian troops are hanging out at the border on the Ukraine. We've got so many things going in terms of a cost of living crisis. And it feels like these ego, who should... And yet, even if we get rid of him, it'll be another person doing pretty much a similar thing.
Well, Nana, I think you're right. I think that, to a certain extent, that's what is bolstering his position, a sense that, look, all things being equal, he would already have gone. But clearly, all things are never equal in politics, and there's a huge number of other things going on. And I think many people, you know, and I have a lot of sympathy with this, would say that for the Conservative Party now to mire themselves in a process that could take 6 to 8 weeks, that's wholly introspective, is a very bad look. And I think, you know, that is, if you like, the weight that's keeping him in place. But it needs to be more than that.
Why? Why does it need to be more than that? I mean, and what about people like Dominic Cummings? Because if in the real world somebody did that to me, so continuously kept dropping these bombs, which clearly we now know, he's said, he's used terms which obviously cannot be repeated on air, but he's said what he thinks of the Prime Minister, and he's also admitted that he really wants to take him down. So we know that a lot of this is coming from there. Is anybody going to be looking at what he's doing? Because ultimately he's holding these cards and actually controlling the game here, and people are going along with it.
Well, but he doesn't seem to be playing the cards very effectively, and he doesn't seem to even be holding those cards. So, yes, it's absolutely true that I think there is a bit of a Get Boris campaign, and it's coming from various different sources. It's coming from people like Dominic Cummings who feel aggrieved with him on a personal level. It's coming from people who think that he may have let them down on their particular policy agenda. And most worryingly, I think it's coming from people who want to reinstate our entry back into the European Union. So, you know, there is a very uncomfortable coalition that wants to bring down Boris Johnson. But notwithstanding all of that being true, he's making a complete hash-up of it himself. So,
he is, yes.
So, you know, in a way, they're playing right into an agenda which he seems to be happy to fulfil.
Well, in a way, but then won't it end up in their own demise at the end? So if they were to play the long game, so if this was a game of chess, I would have looked at where I'd want to be at the end of it and wondered whether my achievements and the things I'm doing now will take me there. And right now it looks like it's checkmate for the entire Conservative Party if they carry on this track, because otherwise this is perfect. I mean, surely the Labour Party will be quite happy to be watching this from the sidelines and kicking the oar in every day.
I think the Labour Party have played this very effectively, actually. And even before Boris Johnson made the controversial remarks that he made this week, and I'm not sure that they're as controversial as people are making out.
I didn't think they
were. But the thing is, it has gone down badly, whatever you think of them. But even before he did that, I think that Keir Starmer was handling this very well. He was standing back. He was being prime ministerial. He was, you know, he doesn't set the world on fire, but he's seeming, in comparison to what's going on in Number 10, as being very competent. And I think, you know, this is a big problem for Boris Johnson. There just seems to be a complete lack of competence. And it's not just from him, but it's from the whole operation.
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer, as you said, he's sitting back, not doing anything. And I think that's probably the reason why he's doing OK, because every time he does something, it doesn't seem to go well for him. But, hey, I mean, you know, if you were to then put somebody in, if, say, we get rid of Boris, who would you suggest?
Well, I mean, you know, I think realistically, if there was a leadership election in short order, I think that Rishi Sunak is at the top of the list of likely contenders. But actually, I think, you know, one of the reasons why some MPs may want to delay this process is that there is a lot of talent on the second tier down that we're not so familiar with, and I'd like to see somebody like perhaps Penny Mordaunt.
Well, they could be. You never know. Penny could be worse. Although, if anyone could be, I don't know. Listen, John.
Well, anybody, potentially. We don't know the full extent of their capabilities. But at the moment, I think people are drawing the conclusion that actually nobody would be worse.
You think so? OK. Well, Joanne, thank you so much for joining me. That's Joanne Nadler. She was a Conservative advisor. Right, if you just tuned in, this is GB News. You've been saying quite a few things. Ray said he should go if he doesn't scrap the net zero target, which will bankrupt us. Simon says the aides are leaving now, knowing that they were culpable in the drinks and small gatherings. So many more. We will read all of those. But right now, let's go to Polly for your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. our latest headlines this hour. A Conservative MP, Aaron Bell, has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. He said he struggled to reconcile assurances given to him by Boris Johnson over the Sue Gray report. It's reported that up to 17 MPs have submitted letters, but 54 letters are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. In other news today, Downing Street says the departure of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Principal Private Secretary and Director of Communications had been agreed beforehand. Boris Johnson has reportedly told Downing Street staff that change is good. The fifth advisor, Elena Nanozansky, resigned just hours after the other three, and that followed the resignation of the policy chief, Munira Mirza, yesterday. An order to stop Brexit checks on food and agricultural products at Northern Ireland ports has been suspended by the High Court in Belfast. The judge was putting in place an order by the Agriculture Minister Edwin Poots, but it's believed to potentially breach international law. The interim suspension will be in place until a judicial review can be heard in full. A man who admitted conspiring to exploit a vulnerable man found living in a 6-foot-long shed with no lighting has been given a suspended prison sentence. 56-year-old Peter Swales Jr. was given a 9-month jail term at Carlisle Crown Court, suspended for 18 months. The court heard that the victim had been exploited for 40 years, including being made to live in a horse box and a disused caravan. The Crown accepted Swales' plea that although he had known the victim for many years, he was unaware of his living conditions. China and Russia have proclaimed a deep strategic alliance, and that comes as China's president hosts Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the opening day of the Beijing Winter Olympics. In a joint statement, the two countries declared that their new relationship was superior to any Cold War alliance. The Russian leader's visit comes amid growing Chinese support for Moscow in its dispute with Ukraine. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. We come back to Nana Akua after this break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 4:39. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. So back to our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? So 5 of the Prime Minister's senior advisors and Downing Street staff members have quit. That's within the last 24 hours. Now, that's the biggest blow, one of which will undoubtedly be the resignation of a very close ally, Munira Mirza, who's worked with the Prime Minister for the past 14 years, including his 8-year stint as a London mayor. And to possibly make things worse this afternoon, if they could get any worse, Conservative MP Aaron Bell says that he submitted a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister to Sir Graham Brady. So for the Great British Debate today, I'm asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? So let's see what my panel make of this. I'm joined by former Conservative advisor Claire Pissell and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Now, Claire, I'm definitely going to start with you because, of course, you're an ex-advisor to the Conservative Party. I did ask Joanne what she would advise Boris to be doing now. What would your advice be if you were advising him?
Oh, I mean, my advice would have been months back.
Which would have been what?
To get all the information out there. And it is very, very damaging to keep having a drip of information coming through. We're in the middle of a police investigation. This is not where you need your Prime Minister to be. The arguments going around about the resignations is quite interesting because I think Munira's resignation was real heartfelt. She was going to go, she's had enough, which is a really big blow to him. The next three that came, also very interesting because I believe them to be part of a discussion that was already going on. So if you look at the Martin Reynolds, Rosenfeld and Doyle, now I believe that they were going to be on their way out anyway.
Right.
So you can look at it as to say, you know, the Prime Minister said he was going to be sorting it, he is sorting it, those three just happened to come out at that time. After that, it now looks like more people are leaving off their own volition. So I think
that perhaps they're leaving because they have links with Partygate and there might be some things leaking very soon about them because a lot of the names we haven't really heard.
And nobody outside of the Westminster bubble will have heard of these people. Now, they could be implicated, they could not. I really don't know. But it just looks like a fracturing down of number 10. And unless you are going to replace those people with some extremely clever, able people, as Joanne was saying, and quite rightly so, then you really are into territory where you've got no leadership.
Well, would you go there if Boris came and asked you to work for him?
I think I'm the last person on his list.
Why?
Why? I think I'm slightly outspoken at his policies, and he did get rid of myself and my boss in 2019. So I don't think there's any way back for me. And I'm not sure he would take on somebody like me.
What do you think?
Why? Not those fabulous fingernails.
You know, I'm older than a lot of advisors currently in number 10. I quite happily will tell ministers no. And I don't think he wants people like that around him. He may need them, but he doesn't want them. And I don't think that I'm quite his type of person.
Too formidable, maybe?
I'm not sure formidable. I'm probably quite stroppy, I think is the word you're looking for.
I think every time I hear Keir Starmer stand up and say, will he resign? He needs to go. I think that's so insincere. The last thing he wants is for Boris Johnson to go. Because if Boris Johnson's still at the helm and the May local elections go very anti-Conservative, then that's more ammunition for Labour to win the next general election. The last thing he wants is Boris Johnson to go, it really is. I was driving down today and I was thinking about, you mentioned the Westminster bubble, and I was thinking about people in the Midlands, where I've driven down from, and I'm a Scouser, and people in the North West, and whether they really give a damn about Partygate as much as the media wants them to give a damn. Nana, I've seen, you've gone on record over the last couple of weeks, this is driven by the media.
Well, to me, that's what I see. I mean, I see this whole thing driven by the media. Every time you try and escape anything that Boris has done, suddenly they want to talk about it again. They literally will not let it go. It's terrible. Munira has resigned and 14 years. But all the others that you said, those three you said would have gone anyway, pretty much. They were on their way out. The others could be going because of Partygate. You know, really and truly, this is all, it does feel like a...
But let me just qualify that before you come back at me. I listen to various speech-based radio stations, and you have a presenter on who will get a victim of somebody, their father died and they couldn't go to the funeral, and they will milk that for all it's worth. And yes, it's terrible, but I would hazard a guess that the overwhelming majority of the population don't really care that that fella never went to his father's funeral. And they don't really care that Boris Johnson was, sorry to be so blunt, they don't really care that Boris Johnson had a slice of cake for 10 minutes.
I mean, were you offended by his comments regarding Keir Starmer and
Jimmy Savile? Unbelievable. Why did he say that? It's ridiculous. And also, to defend Keir Starmer, if the CPS had enough evidence to actually prosecute Jimmy Savile, it's almost as if he implied that Keir Starmer turned a blind eye to Jimmy Savile like the BBC did in the 70s.
Well, the thing is, the other side of it is actually that with this comment, he qualified the comment later by saying that because Keir Starmer was at the head of this thing, that's why he would have been accountable. But then I suppose if you do turn it the other way around, then if you're using that logic, then you should be accountable yourself. So I don't think it's so. In so many ways, it just didn't do him any favours at all. But I have to admit, when he said it, I thought, oh, that's typical Boris style. I wasn't deeply offended. I didn't think he meant it to offend any of the victims. But the thing is, though, what happened was that then, as you say, on some radio stations, you were hearing victims who had been through child abuse calling up and talking about it.
Yeah.
And so, in that respect, it was insensitive, but it wasn't necessary as well, which is exactly what Joanne said. He didn't need to add that in because it's just adding more fuel to the people who really want to see him go.
But I think that's the problem, because when he started out the statement on Monday, it was measured, there was some contriteness, it was scripted, and he delivered it well. I thought the tone, for somebody that criticises him normally, I thought the tone actually was very, very good. The problem comes with the response from the opposition, and the Prime Minister got angry. And that's when those comments come out. He needs to be able to get a control of it.
I don't think it would have made any difference. I think people are really out to get him, whatever he says. Even if there's a tiny way that, when you say something and people could take it one way or the other.
Because it's a bit like the Rishi Sunak comment that people have jumped upon. I don't actually read anything into it, but it appears to have now become a thing going, oh, look, he means this. But I'm not buying that at all.
He didn't neither support or defend or anything. He just made a comment that he wouldn't say that.
I think he's toast with the May elections.
Well, let's have a look, because this show is absolutely nothing without your views. So let's welcome one of our great British voices. This is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what your thoughts are on the topic that we're discussing. And today we're joined by Dave Mountford, a licensee and founding member of the Forum of British Pubs. He's in the Peak District in Derbyshire. Dave, it must be lovely there. Is it time for Boris Johnson to go?
Yeah, I'm afraid I think it is. I was a bit of a supporter of Boris when he came into to head up the Conservative Party, and the reason for that was very simple. I think the country was in deadlock over Brexit, and whether you liked it or you didn't like Brexit, you needed somebody who was going to, as he put it, get it done. And I think he was the right person to do that, and he did. And I think Theresa May was paralysed by the situation she found herself in. So at the time, he was the right person. But what we've seen recently is all of the faults that I think everybody knew he had and people were warned us about have come to the fore. I think without a doubt, the situation we find ourselves in now, he's got very little credibility. I don't think the party has got a lot of credibility either, to be honest with you, because unfortunately he has surrounded himself by a lot of yes men and women, and I think there's probably a reason for that, because he's probably comes across as being a character who's probably very insecure and doesn't like to be challenged by too many strong-willed people. So the problem we've sometimes got now, from a point of view of looking in as a member of the public, is who would replace him. I think definitely the time has come.
The time has come, he says, and very, very briefly, one name, who would replace him?
Okay, so
one
there
name,
are a couple of people.
One name, Dave, just one.
Okay, Esther McVeigh. Okay.
Esther McVeigh. She might not want to leave. She works here, doesn't she, Esther?
Scouser.
Dave, thank you so much for your thoughts. It's really good to talk to you. That's Dave Mountford. He's in the Peak District there. He is out there. He's given us his views. He thought that Esther McVeigh might be a good replacement for Boris. Esther McVeigh.
She ran in 2019, I believe, in that leadership contest. There were a whole slate of candidates. I believe she was one of them. It would be interesting to see if she would go for it again. I'm always a great fan of having a woman on the slate, but it would be really, really interesting to see some other names come forward.
Well, it would be. And he said that where he is, he's in the Peak District there. A lot of people are saying that Boris needs to go. You said that where you are, most people aren't really talking about that.
No, people aren't talking about it in the pubs. They're not talking about whether Boris Johnson should go. Mind you, saying that he's a publican, so he knows what people are talking about in the pubs. And it was great to hear another vox pop from the GB News viewers. What I would say, though, it's nice, you said it's nice to have a woman on the... I believe in meritocracies. rather than the equivalence of outcome. I believe in the equivalence of opportunity, but I don't think you should just have a woman there. I'd never say it's nice to have a woman.
I didn't say that.
She said it'd be nice. She wasn't
because in politics, it is really, really difficult being a woman in politics. So those that do put their name forward, I think, you know, full credit to them because it's a really tough environment, as is the media.
As is the media.
But she shouldn't be appointed because she's a woman.
But I didn't say that.
But she's not saying that.
Putting yourself forward.
Listen, today I'm asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end of Boris Johnson? And a lot of you have been getting in touch with your views. Zach says, good riddance to those who have resigned. Jack says, it's a clear out, not the end for Boris. There's a difference. Rob says, absolutely, Boris needs to step down and let someone competent sort this mess out. Tim says, of course it is. You'd have to be a right idiot to not see the trend. I'm not surprised another MP put his letter in today. Michelle says it's just smoke and mirrors to keep the public thinking something sinister is being done when it's not. Right, so keep those thoughts coming. There's a pull-up on Twitter as well throughout the show asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? And currently, 72% of you say no. This is not the end of Boris Johnson. It's like in the Rocky things when he goes slow-mo, he'll live to fight another day. After the break, within the next decade, you could be heading to a pharmacy to have liposuction, breast implants, or even a baby. That's what one private firm is hoping to offer. They'll say that it takes pressure off the healthcare services and the NHS. So I'll be discussing that with my panel and an NHS doctor to hear his thoughts. But first, let's get some weather for you.
Hello again. It's going to be a windy weekend for all, and for some, a wintry weekend, particularly in Scotland, where we will see further snow showers. Elsewhere, we're more likely to see outbreaks of rain. This weather front introduced the colder air that you've probably noticed through the day today. More weather fronts are approaching. They will spread outbreaks of rain across the country tomorrow. But in between, many places becoming dry overnight. We do still have snow showers coming into western Scotland. However, the snow could build up here over some of the higher routes and potentially cause a little bit of disruption. The snow showers will ease across the hills of northwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland as outbreaks of rain trickle back into here and western Scotland by dawn. Temperatures dropping close to freezing, but there's enough of a wind to stop those temperatures falling too far. Certainly a touch of frost likely, though, in rural areas, but a dry and a bright start for much of the Midlands, southern England, sunny spells here, but grey and damp for northwest England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, with some more snow here, even to lower levels for a time. That rain will be heavy as it pushes into northwest England, North Wales during the afternoon, patchy rain over the Midlands by the end of the day. Some rain in Edinburgh for the Calcutta Cup. It should be easing off by the time we get to kick-off, but across northern Scotland we will see snow showers returning here and again likely to cause some disruption as they last through Saturday night and Sunday. A Met Office yellow warning in place here. Elsewhere, further south, mostly outbreaks of rain that we see, keeping the temperatures up through Saturday night and Sunday, but making for a very different day across the south. Certainly early on, dull and damp. Rain tending to peter out, brighter skies developing through the afternoon. But it's going to stay windy throughout the day, and those windy conditions bringing further snow showers across northern Scotland and turning more wintry the showers over northern England through the day. Another cold day here. Further south it'll be mild, but feeling colder with the wind.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, picking up a prescription, having a jab or grabbing a spare tube of toothpaste, all things that should be a very small thing to do and all part of what a pharmacy has to offer. The Alitam Group, a private firm which runs around about 140 small pharmacies in the UK and Ireland, wants to transform high street stores. Patients would be able to book a range of operations, so dental care, cosmetic work, such as breast enlargements and liposuction, and even giving birth in these super pharmacies. Now, the company says that it will reduce pressure on the NHS. So I'm joined by Nathan Spence, an NHS doctor in Oxford. Nathan, thank you so much for joining me. Nathan, do you think that this would relieve pressure on the NHS, or do you think perhaps it's a bit of not a great thing, and this isn't the sort of thing a pharmacy should be doing?
Well, I think it's a really interesting idea, isn't it? And I appreciate what they're saying. We can do anything at the moment to try and reduce the pressure on the NHS. Unprecedented waiting times. People are waiting a long time to be seen. However, the company discussed that they want to introduce these super pharmacies where they do procedures, they offer various treatments, therapeutic plans. We already have those. They're called hospitals. And I think really what we should be focusing on is trying to increase the funding to hospitals, reducing wait times by the NHS, rather than introducing private solutions that ultimately, I think, leave patients worse off.
Well, that's the thing as well, because if you do go for a private, go for sort of a private operation or something like that, and then it goes horribly wrong, they then bring it to the NHS and the problem is probably duplicated further. And it could be that they just didn't have the resource there to treat whatever complication you've come across. And that would be an issue, wouldn't it, really? But what about things like, say, for example, breast enlargements, which the NHS don't necessarily do unless it's cosmetically necessary?
And I think that's an interesting point. So thinking about treatments the NHS don't offer, that maybe can be done privately. However, I noticed that they say that they have a list of professionals that would work in these clinics. They talk about nurses, dentists, pharmacists. No one mentioned our doctors. No one mentioned our surgeons. And you don't go to the NHS and wait to see a surgeon for when things go right. It's when they go wrong. And if those, as you mentioned, those complications arise, things don't work. You don't want to be on the first floor of a chemist on the high street. Mm-hmm. You want to be in a hospital with access to intensive care, people that can help you when things go wrong.
And I was going to ask, though, do you think that that it is actually the role of the pharmacies to try and reduce the burden on the NHS in many respects?
I think absolutely. And I think we all health professionals, we have all need to band together to try and reduce the waiting times. But I think we need to move away from the idea of trying to dilute down what we all do. I mean, pharmacists are very specialists in what they do. I wouldn't dream of being able to be a pharmacist. Similarly, we don't need pharmacists who do a very important role trying to sort of get into other fields. We already have people that do those jobs, surgeons, doctors, etc. Let them do those jobs. I think the pharmacists do their jobs, and together we use our respective skills to help patients.
Well, Nathan, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Nathan Spence. He's an NHS doctor. And actually, to be honest, it's a bit of an affront, isn't it, when somebody goes, well, I can just do your job. It's actually only a bit of this and a bit of that, when actually it's quite complicated and quite a complex thing that they're actually performing. You're with me, Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, on radio and online. So much more to come. So stay with us for the next hour. It's fast approaching 5 o'clock, so for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. But before we get started, let's get some latest headlines.
Good afternoon. I'm Polly Middlehurst in the newsroom at 5 o'clock. The Conservative MP Aaron Bell has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. He said he struggled to reconcile assurances Boris Johnson had given him about the Sue Gray report and that the gatherings held in Number 10 make the Prime Minister's position untenable. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but 54 letters are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. And Downing Street says the departure of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Principal Private Secretary and Director of Communications yesterday had been agreed previously. Boris Johnson reportedly told Downing Street staff that change is good. It comes after reports of fifth advisor Elena Narazansky resigned just hours after the other three quit. Policy Chief Munira Mirza also resigned yesterday. She cited Mr Johnson's refusal to withdraw his claim that Sir Keir Starmer had failed to properly prosecute Jimmy Savile when he was Director of Public Prosecutions. Speaking to the media in London, Health Secretary Sajid Javid distanced himself from the attack on the Labour leader.
I think Keir Starmer, when he was running the DPP, did a good job and he should be respected for it. It's a tough job and he deserves absolute respect for that. But the Prime Minister has also come out and he's clarified those remarks, and that's important.
7 men have been jailed after a plot to sell on an array of lethal weapons was disrupted by the National Crime Agency. Our Home and Security editor Mark White has this report.
This is the moment the law finally caught up with Umair Zaire, a Manchester drugs dealer who bought deadly firearms to enforce his criminal trade. Also arrested by the National Crime Agency, another member of the gang, Bilal Khan. Protesting his innocence, but this is Bilal Khan just days earlier, his head deliberately obscured, posing with an AK-47 he'd just bought. Zaire clutched the same weapon, showing off in another picture. As well as AK-47 assault rifles, Scorpion and Uzi machine guns, handguns and ammunition were all up for sale on an encrypted online site used by criminals across the globe. Robert Brazendale, who helped supply the weapons, was arrested after he fled to Malaga in Spain. In total, 7 organised criminals, including drug dealers and gun runners, have now been sentenced to a combined 81 years in jail. Mark White.
Mark White there. And the boss of one of the UK's big 6 energy companies has today told the government to focus on getting the UK off the gas grid and instead invest in energy efficiency. E.ON's boss added it would also reduce people's fuel bills. It follows the regulator Ofgem's announcement yesterday that energy prices will soar by 54% from April, the hike affecting 22 million households and adding up to about £700 to annual bills. An order to stop checks on agricultural products and food at Northern Ireland's ports has been suspended by a High Court judge in Belfast. The order was put in place by the Agriculture Minister, Edwin Poots, yesterday, but it's believed the move may have breached international law. The interim suspension will be in place until there's a judicial review into the DUP minister's decision. The move has meant Stormont's executive can no longer meet and is unable to take significant policy decisions, with the DUP First Minister Paul Givan stepping down last night over the disruption to the Northern Ireland Protocol. The former peer, Lord Nazir Ahmed, has been jailed for 5 years and 6 months for the attempted rape of a young girl and for sexually assaulting a boy in the 70s. Although the 64-year-old resigned from the House of Lords, he retains the title Lord Ahmed of Rotherham. He was found guilty at Sheffield Crown Court in January and has been jailed at the same court today. In international news, China and Russia have announced a new deep strategic alliance as China's President Xi Jinping hosts Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the opening day of the Beijing Winter Olympics. In a joint statement, the two countries declared their new relationship was superior to any political or military alliance of the Cold War era. The Russian leader's visit to China comes amid growing Chinese support for Moscow in its dispute with Ukraine, one that threatens to break out into an all-out armed conflict. You're with GB News, more news as it happens, but now let's get more from Nana Akua.
5:05. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua, on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion, mine, theirs and yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and broadcaster Danny Kelly. Still to come, each Friday we'll put the spotlight on a particular guest or a subject matter in my feature Friday Focus. And today, do clean air zones actually work? Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the proposed scheme to cut emissions in Greater Manchester is completely unworkable. Similar schemes which see some vehicles face daily charges are already in place in some parts of the country, like in Birmingham. We'll find out what people there make of it.
I don't think it's fair, because the point is, we've all got a living to do, and the point is, everything they do now is charging.
I'll also speak to Labour MP for Blackley and Broughton in Manchester to find out his thoughts on the proposed zone there. And the great British debate this hour. I'm asking, should there be a windfall tax on oil and gas companies? Shell reported historically high profits, making £4.7 billion in the final quarter of last year. But with millions of households likely to pay an extra £693 a year on their energy bills from April, and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak offering £200 of yearly energy bill relief, I'm asking, should the government have looked at introducing a windfall tax on profiting companies instead? Let me know your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. This week, Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham clashed over a proposed clean air zone in Greater Manchester. From the 30th of May, commercial vehicles with high emissions in the city could face a daily charge as high as £60. Boris Johnson criticised the Labour mayor over the zone in the House of Commons. Let's hear what he had to say.
I know from my own experience how vital it is when you're trying to clean up air in a great city that you do not unjustly penalise business, and particularly small businesses. And it's become clear that the scheme proposed by the Labour mayor in Manchester is completely unworkable, will do more damage to businesses and residents in Manchester.
But Mayor Andy Burnham says that the measure will help keep air pollution at a legal level, and has asked for it to be rolled back to include just buses, HGVs and non-local taxis. Similar schemes which see some vehicles face daily charges are already in place across London, Birmingham and, of course, Bath. So is a clean air charge the right thing to do, or will it just hurt businesses? I'm joined by Graham Stringer, who's the Labour MP for Blackley and Broughton in Manchester. Graham, firstly, thank you for joining me. So what do you think of the comments made by Boris Johnson about the clean air zones earlier this week?
I don't think the clean air zone should go ahead, and I've just had a news bulletin and a text that it's going to be delayed for 2 months anyway, until July rather than May. The air at the present time is a lot cleaner than it used to be. It's about 60–70% cleaner than it used to be. But one of the things wrong with going ahead now is nobody knows how much nitrogen dioxide is in the air. It's calculated, it isn't measured. And there is no doubt that the scheme as it is going to damage the economy. There's no doubt that air will get cleaner as we move towards electric vehicles. And after the experience of the last 2 years with the epidemic, the last thing we need now are extra taxes in the system in Greater Manchester.
So who pays for this then? So if, say, I'm one of the buses or taxis or whatever that's going into this zone, if I'm green, so I have a green, so no emissions, do I need to pay, or is it only those polluting vehicles that pay?
It's the polluting vehicles, but the consultation's been very poor. The areas that are said to be polluted, nobody has measured them. And there are grants in the schemes for people to upgrade their vehicles so that they're compliant with the latest legislation. The problem is the grants aren't big enough, and if it moves past buses onto vans, then those businesses will go bust. It's as simple as that. I've had many representations of people saying we just can't make this work. But the real thing is we shouldn't be going ahead with extra taxation without even knowing what the levels of pollution are at the present time. We know that they're about 60% less than they were 30 years ago and getting better. We need to know exactly what they are at the present time so that if there is to be a scheme, then it is accurate. Most of the experience of these schemes is that the threat of the schemes over a period of time actually gets people, when they can and when they can afford it, to buy vehicles that are non-polluting.
Well, but as you've sort of mentioned that, though, I can remember a time when they were saying buy diesel instead of petrol because it's better and also you'll get more tax breaks from it. Now it turns out that they've changed their mind and that actually diesel is no good because of the emissions and petrol is slightly better, but diesel is the spawn of Satan, basically, so we have to get rid of all of that. But then in a little while, they might come out with the fact that electricity or electric vehicles are no good. And people aren't really ready to put that big investment into actually buying an electric vehicle. So my question is, once they just say everyone there is using electric vehicles and no one is paying anything at all, won't they simply find another way of getting money out of people in the city?
I think you made two really good points there. One, the Treasury are driving this. It's not primarily about pollution. Planet Earth have taken the government to court because they were breaking European legislation. The government can change that now we're out of the EU. And the Treasury really want that money. But the second thing is, not just the Treasury, but people are saying we've got to do something about these things. And the point you make it's about 16 years ago when the government recommended that everybody move to diesel. They did that just because they were looking at carbon dioxide, and actually they produce more of the poison. Carbon dioxide is not poisonous, nitrogen dioxide is, and they produce more nitrogen dioxide, which damages people's health because they just looked at one thing. We aren't even, in this example, looking at the exact levels of air pollution. It's a bit of panic, partly driven by very bad European legislation, partly driven by people saying we have to do something about the environment generally, and people aren't looking properly at the detail. So I think this scheme should be scrapped completely.
It does seem to be, I mean, you know, it does seem to have the potential to disrupt and destroy, actually, some businesses without actual proper information about the levels of pollutants in the air. Well, listen, it's been very good talking to you, Graham. Thank you so much for joining me. That's Graham Stringer, an MP, Labour MP for Blackley and Broughton. Thank you so much. So last year, clean air zones were introduced in Bath and Birmingham to try and cut down the pollution levels in those cities. So what's the response been like so far about that scheme? Our West Midlands reporter Balvinder Sidhu has been asking people in Birmingham city centre what they make of the zone there.
Really keen to see the air improvement and air quality in Birmingham get better because it's a city we love and we want to keep coming and raise this one here.
It's a good idea, but you shouldn't have to pay for it. There's enough money in this country, and that's been in the past, to pay for it 100 times over. And Wolverhampton's the same.
Do you think it's making improvements to the air quality?
No, not at all, especially when you consider when you have to go really far round, it's adding miles onto other people's journeys and everything that they're doing around the city as well. Stopping you going down roads so you have to go drive even further, it's making the air worse, I think.
No, I don't think it's fair, because the point is we've all got a living to do, and the point is everything they're doing now is charging. It's ridiculous that some people can't afford it.
Well, I mean, that is the case, isn't it? And it's very expensive. I'm joined now by Anita James, the founder of the Business Exchange Southwest in Bath. She's been working with businesses there to find out the impact of the clean air zones and how they're working for them. Anita, thank you so much for joining us. Has this clean air zone then proved to be popular in Bath?
It's a really mixed picture at this stage. The clean air zone will have been in place for a year as of the 15th of March this year. So we're kind of gathering data, but the data that we're gathering or have gathered so far can't be relied upon because of the pandemic. We have pedestrianisation that's happened because of the pandemic. We've had roads closures in Bath. It's a main artery to the city that's been affected. So we've had heavy traffic in some areas because of that. And we haven't had normal traffic levels or footfall in the city as well to really get a feel for how people are going to be travelling in our cities in this new world that we're in. And if you look at the figures from Bath and North East Somerset Council, from what's been reported so far, there were some figures reported in December. And in terms of the eligibility, so 2,500 people applied for some funding to help with compliant vehicles. 1,495 were eligible, and nearly 600, or only nearly 600, have actually gone through and got those new vehicles. So why haven't they got those that are eligible? Why haven't they gone through, had that funding and got their new cars now? And I think it's because people haven't got the money. And they're waiting to see what levels they get to in their businesses before they can start investing again.
Because it's been a worrying time, especially, as you said, with the pandemic. And then, of course, with the actual air pollution, it was so much lessened because there was nobody about. Nobody was going about. So there's no point taking any sort of readings from the air quality at those times. But the real issue must be the fact that if the government and these zones are to exist, then ultimately, if everybody then ends up with a clean air zone vehicle, then, as I said earlier to the MP I was speaking to previously, is that the government won't pick any taxation up from people and there'll be another tax.
Exactly. This hasn't been thought through, and we need to be attracting people to our cities and towns at the moment. And I think so visitors coming into, say, Bath in the coming months, if they haven't got a compliant vehicle, as it's a one-off and they're visiting our city, if some people were hit last year with fines that they'd come to the city for a nice day out and they'd got a fine and they didn't want to come back again. And we don't want to be doing that. We want people to be spending money in our cities and towns, and it really is a challenge.
Well, it's literally will be driving people away. Anita, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Anita Jane. She's the founder of the Business Exchange Southwest. So let's see what my panel make of the clean air zones. I'm joined today by former Conservative advisor Claire Pissell and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. I think we'll start with Danny, because with you being a used car dealer.
And also a West Midlander who was broadcasting for the BBC. Whilst Birmingham City Council, were trying to convince the constituents that it was a good idea, universally unpopular with the constituents of Birmingham City Council. And of course, and I agree with both of those guests that you had, Nana, but as soon as you say we're against it, someone's going to say, you want me to die of poisoning, do you? You know, the emotional blackmail. And it is such a deterrent to drive into Birmingham City Centre. It's £8. Crazy thing is, if you go in at 5 to midnight and you leave at 5 past midnight, you've got to pay 2 lots of £8. And they're just breaking the balls of the average motorist. They want people to drive newer cars. They want old cars off the road. And Birmingham's a working class area where people drive non-compliant cars.
But they have a point in terms of the levels of air pollution, actually. I mean, there is actually a real issue with the levels of air pollution and the fact that they do, affect people's health, and that there have been people who have now died of, and they actually, I mean, there was a couple of years ago where that poor child died, and they put air pollution on the death certificate for the first time. So, there is an issue with it, though.
There is, but I think, as we've seen, and as Graham Stringer mentioned, the consultation wasn't done properly or at all. So we can't take the figures from 2020, 2021, because people weren't using their cars. And as you say, we were in lockdown for quite a lot of it, so the air quality was a lot better. So I think they need to actually do some proper studies going forward. But these kind of zones sound like a really good idea and end up pushing the traffic into the outlying areas and villages, and they suffer.
So it doesn't really change anything. And also, as Graham pointed out, he talked about the fact that they did the measurements on nitrogen dioxide, nobody was counting the carbon dioxide, and now we've decided that we're going to work out the CO2 instead. So some cars passed, but they wouldn't have done. And there was also that thing where some of the car companies were sort of doing some sort of scam with the emissions and all sorts. So
the Volkswagen
figures
group
were a little strange.
So it's all about the numbers really at the end of the day. But but when it comes down to the numbers, I think ultimately it's about the money. Well, coming up, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should there be a windfall tax on oil and gas companies? The Labour Party called for a levy on the profits of oil and gas producers to help ease the energy crisis. Shell reported historically high profits this week, making £4.7 billion in the final quarter of last year. So I'm asking, should there be a windfall tax on oil and gas companies? First, let's get some more weather for you.
Hello again. It's going to be a windy weekend for all, and for some, a wintry weekend, particularly in Scotland, where we will see further snow showers. Elsewhere, we're more likely to see outbreaks of rain. This weather front introduced the colder air that you've probably noticed through the day today. More weather fronts are approaching. They will spread outbreaks of rain across the country tomorrow. But in between, many places becoming dry overnight. We do still have snow showers coming into western Scotland. However, the snow could build up here over some of the higher routes and potentially cause a little bit of disruption. The snow showers will ease across the hills of northwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland as outbreaks of rain trickle back into here and western Scotland by dawn. Temperatures dropping close to freezing, but there's enough of a wind to stop those temperatures falling too far. Certainly a touch of frost likely, though, in rural areas, but a dry and a bright start for much of the Midlands, southern England, sunny spells here, but grey and damp for northwest England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, with some more snow here, even to lower levels for a time. That rain will be heavy as it pushes into northwest England, North Wales during the afternoon, patchy rain over the Midlands by the end of the day. Some rain in Edinburgh for the Calcutta Cup. It should be easing off by the time we get to kick-off. But across northern Scotland, we will see snow showers returning here and, again, likely to cause some disruption as they last through Saturday night and Sunday. A Met Office yellow warning in place here. Elsewhere, further south, mostly outbreaks of rain that we see, keeping the temperatures up through Saturday night and Sunday, but making for a very different day across the south. Certainly early on, dull and damp. Rain tending to peter out, brighter skies developing through the afternoon. But it's going to stay windy throughout the day, and those windy conditions bringing further snow showers across northern Scotland and turning more wintry the showers over northern England through the day. Another cold day here. Further south it'll be mild, but feeling colder with the wind.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's fast approaching 25 minutes after 5 o'clock. Welcome if you just tuned in. I'm Nana Akua on GB News, on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time now for our Great British Debate. And this hour, I'm asking, should there be a windfall tax on oil and gas companies? Now, the Labour Party's called for a levy on the profits of oil and gas producers to ease the energy price crisis. And this is partly because the energy giant Shell recorded a profit of £4.7 billion in the final quarter of last year. That's driven by a surge in oil and gas prices, whilst millions of us here in the UK face a rise of nearly £700 a year in our energy bills. Chancellor Rishi Sunak offered £200 of yearly energy bill relief to households, but it's been criticised as it'll have to be paid back within 5 years. So I'm asking, should the government introduce a windfall tax on oil and gas companies to help subsidise bills? I'm joined now by someone who's been calling for such a levy. It's environmental policy researcher Laurie Laybourne-Langton. Laurie, thank you for joining us. Why do you think that there should be a tax on these companies?
As you said in the intro there, they are profit.
Oh, hang on, he's gone a little bit frozen. But we'll come back to him though. But I'm going to quickly have a chat with the panel whilst we get him back. But yeah, so Claire, should there be a tax on a levy on these companies, or a big windfall tax to start?
No, it doesn't solve the problem. It sounds really quite attractive, but it doesn't actually solve your problem. And what it will do is deter these companies from investing in the UK. So you are then at risk of being reliant upon buying in gas and electricity hedging from other places. So it's one of these things that Labour Party keep coming up with, and it doesn't work. And I can understand why they look at it.
The energy is so expensive in that guy's house, he's frozen. I disagree. I've never really bought into the theory that if you tax companies, they're going to move somewhere else. I've never really bought into that theory. And I'm a red-blooded capitalist. I'm not a lefty socialist. But I'm beginning, once you hear that the bill's going up 700 nicker, I'm beginning to wonder whether a windfall tax is potentially what I...
Well, I think we've got him back, actually, Laurie. So, Laurie, so we were talking about this windfall tax. Joining me is Laurie Laybourne-Langton. Laurie, what do you think? The Labour Party have been calling for this for some time. It sounds like Rishi Sunak might consider it now, but what is your view?
Yeah, they're earning huge profits, as you said in your introduction, at a time where we're all suffering. And we must remember here that the regime that oil and gas companies enjoy in this country is far more generous than other countries around the world. Norway, for example, takes about $21 per barrel of tax on the oil that's been extracted. In the UK, it's about $2 per barrel. We're giving money at times back to oil and gas more than at times it's giving to us in tax. So we've got a hugely generous regime already for these companies that are making a huge amount of money from a situation where we're all struggling. And that just doesn't add up to any of us, and particularly for our viewers, I think.
What about the argument that Claire put forward? Was in actual fact, it might deter them from wanting to invest in our country if we raise taxes or try and put windfall taxes on them?
Well, there are two problems with the argument. The first is that the amount of investment that, say, Shell has been making in this country, particularly in renewable energy, has actually been declining anyway, which is a serious problem. The second is that we have this climate crisis and we need to act on that, as the government is rightly saying it wants to do. So we need to be moving away from oil and gas anyway. And the current crisis, the situation particularly that we face with gas prices now, is partly because we're dependent on them. If we'd insulated our buildings quicker and more of the buildings across the UK, and we'd moved to renewable energy sources to heat and power our homes, then we wouldn't be in a situation where we're dependent on the price of gas, on companies that are making huge amounts of money and don't want to help us out when they're doing so, and on people like Vladimir Putin. So we've got to move away from these guys in general anyway, and doing so will make our homes better heated, better insulated, and our lives more secure.
What about transitioning, in our transition phase, sort of using our North Sea gas instead, and try and use some of the resources that Mother Nature has actually provided for us?
Yeah, the problem is that that gas doesn't go immediately to the UK. It's extracted by private companies who will sell it at the highest price that they can get, which may be paid by people abroad. During the last quarter of last year, when people were feeling the squeeze on their energy bills, the companies that are extracting oil and gas in the UK were sending huge amounts of it abroad, in some cases double what they'd been sending abroad at similar times in the previous years. So we're sending that stuff to whoever pays the most. So unless you had the government owning the companies and keeping the gas in the country.
Well, that's what I was about to say. What about if we nationalise those companies, you know, that industry, nationalise it and do it ourselves?
We could do if there were the political will and we had the resources. It may be best to put that political will and those resources into helping people with their energy bills and going harder on investing in the things that will sort this out at root, which is insulating our homes and moving towards sources of energy that don't mean we were dependent on gas and oil prices and supplies from across the world.
So you'd be up for a windfall tax, though, on these companies for sure?
Yeah, definitely. They're making huge amounts of money. We treat them very generously in this country. And at a time where everyone is suffering a lot from high energy bills, I think it is absolutely appropriate that we ask for more from those who can bear it far more than the rest of us.
Mm. And when you say renewable energy, what would your suggestion of those sources be?
Well, it's a mixture of a variety of supply, of, you know, improving our coverage of wind, of solar, of batteries to make sure that we can even out the supply when it isn't necessarily there. We insulate our homes, so we don't necessarily need huge amounts of energy. We seek different sources of heating in our homes with heat pumps and other sources like that. It's a whole picture of things which we've known we've needed to do in this country for a long time. And we haven't done as much and as quickly as we should have over the last 10 to 15 years.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I mean, perhaps the government could consider paying for insulation for all of our homes, and that would probably save us even more money. Thank you very much, Laurie. That's Laurie Leybourne-Langton. He's an environmental policy researcher. Now, in response to calls for a levy, Shell's chief executive, Ben van Beurden, told The Guardian, "I'm not sure that windfall taxes are popular though they seem, are going to help us with energy supply or help us with demand. But of course, we stand ready to be in dialogue with the government on all measures." Interesting. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should there be a windfall tax on oil and gas companies? Let's have a quick look at what you've already been saying. Tony says, without a shadow of a doubt, there should be. Why should they profit so much from our misery? Ben says this will be the first in a long list of fuel suppliers to announce their biggest profits in years. We live in the most corrupt times that we've ever seen. And Rod says, no, I don't think there should be. Why? They would just move the cost to the consumer again. That is a very valid point you make there. If you just joined us, it's coming up to 32 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should there be a windfall tax on oil and gas companies? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster Danny Kelly and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. I'll also be joined in the studio by former roads policing officer Mike Rawson. He'll be giving us the latest on the decision by South Yorkshire Police not to investigate the national highways over the death of a woman on a smart motorway. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Just after 5:30, here are your latest headlines. The Conservative MP Aaron Bell has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in the Prime Minister. He said he struggled to reconcile assurances Boris Johnson had given him about the Sue Gray report. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Downing Street says the departure of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Principal Private Secretary and Director of Communications had already been agreed beforehand. Boris Johnson reportedly told Downing Street staff that change is good. The fifth advisor, Elena Narazanski, resigned just hours after the other three aides quit, and that followed the resignation of Policy Chief Munira Mirza yesterday. An order to stop Brexit checks on food and agricultural products at Northern Ireland's ports has been suspended by a High Court judge in Belfast. The order was put in place by Agriculture Minister Edwin Poots, but is believed to be potentially in breach of international law. The interim suspension will be in place until a judicial review can be heard in full. And China and Russia have proclaimed a deep strategic alliance. Just as China's president hosts Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the opening day of the Beijing Winter Olympics. In a joint statement, the two countries declared that their new relationship was superior to any Cold War alliance. The Russian leader's visit comes amid growing Chinese support for Moscow in its dispute with Ukraine. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. We'll have more from Nana Akua after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's just gone 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the government have introduced a windfall tax on oil and gas companies? Now, some MPs have backed calls for the tax to help ease the energy price crisis, and it comes in the wake of the energy giant Shell recording a £4.7 billion profit. That's in their final quarter of last year, and this is driven by a surge in oil and gas prices, whilst millions of us here in the UK, and obviously around the world as well, but here in the UK, we're actually facing a rise of nearly £700 a year on our energy bills. So the question is, should the government have introduced a windfall tax? Let's see what my panel make of this. I'm joined by former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Danny, I've got to come to you first on this. What do you think about this, a windfall tax on these companies?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a socialist. I'm a red-blooded capitalist. But there are people who are, and it's a cliche, having to choose between heating and eating, £700 increase. And I think it's scandalous that we have come to this perfect storm of... And I listened intently to what that guest said, and I disagree with him on lots of things. I think that we should consider reopening fracking in this country. I know that there's been a moratorium since 2019. In America, they've been doing it for years. I was listening to an expert in fracking last night on the radio, and he's tearing his hair out at some of these YouTube videos of taps being opened and flames coming out. That is putting people off. And you're arguing against the green side of politics, and they always come back to you say, what, you want to pollute water, do you want to pollute lakes?
But they did some fracking, didn't they, a little while ago?
3 earthquakes.
And there were a couple of earthquakes, and to be honest with you, I'm not comfortable with that as a sort of after effect.
I find
after
earthquakes quite exciting.
Well, that's because that's because you're quite firm, so it's going to be tough to.
Oh, I see. Or maybe it's me falling down the stairs. It might not have been fracking.
For those of us who are slight, we sort of.
Oh, they're very exciting, an earthquake.
No,
I
don't
enjoy
think so.
earthquakes.
No. Listen, there's been a huge argument against fracking on many levels because of the fact the disruption it provides to the earth. So I don't know whether that's the way to go. But there was something that he did say that I found most interesting, and that was when he was talking about insulating homes. Because why don't the government, and I'm not a supporter of Insulate Britain in what they do, in how they do it, but I do support their idea that we should have better insulation. Surely that would save us a lot on our bills.
Yeah, it will. And there are schemes in place and warm homes discounts and things like that that can go towards insulation. And a lot of district councils and county councils will offer those homes in need some extra help so that they can do that. So I don't think that is part of the problem. I think part of the problem is the green levy that's being put on the energy bills in the first place.
But that's only 100. But that's 153 quid.
But
so
it's 153 pounds. It's still quite a lot of money.
But they're supposedly giving you 200 back, so they're giving you.
Well,
Yeah, but then you got a £700 hike, though. £700 hike.
Which.
153 quid is a green levy. They're giving you £200. It's like one of those arithmetic and maths.
It's like these hands.
Sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Levelling up is probably what they mean by levelling up, isn't it? Zero.
We do need to look at how we get our energy sources in this country. We shouldn't be reliant on the likes of Russia for our gas. But, you know, this is the situation we're in. And consecutive governments have failed to address it. So it's not just a problem that's come up recently. This has been going on for decades.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, of course, with the balance of the book, so the £200 that they're giving us, you've got to pay that back. The £153, which is still going to be in there, all the charges within there, that green levy. But then there are other parts of this which are a little bit concerning as well, in that, well, obviously we're still heading towards net zero. Whilst we're talking about all of this, we've still got to deal with that too, which does seem a bit of a nonsense, really. And then you've got energy companies making about 20 billion in terms of an overall tax profit.
You do, but I think also, you know, it's slightly in defence of Shell. They have moved their headquarters from the Netherlands into the UK, so they are looking to invest in this country. And I think windfall tax, it just sounds such a good idea. But I'm not convinced that long term that is.
But it's not a long term, is it? It's a one-off to start the ball rolling.
And
okay, and what happens the next?
Well, then
they go up the next.
But we're gradually moving away from our reliance on oil and gas anyway. So now that I know that Shell moved their headquarters from the Netherlands to the UK, I would definitely implement a windfall tax. Just being a hard-nosed businessman, because they're not going to relocate all of a sudden. Honestly, in business, I would suggest if there's someone who's made such a massive move to the UK, and then all of a sudden you say, look, I think that fella said that they're taxed less in the UK than the Netherlands, or I'm sure he said along those lines, just say, listen, I'm ever so sorry. And at the back of my mind, I would be thinking, I know you're not going to relocate.
But that extra well, that did sound like the way the statement did sound as if what they're saying is, well, we're open to a discussion, which is good.
Yeah.
But this £200 that they're giving us, so the money that's supposedly coming back to us, that doesn't start until October. And in October is when the price cap comes back in, so they put another cap on the prices. And as you know, the price cap literally doubled, which is why it's so high now. That price cap could go even higher, which means the £200 could actually be zero in the end, so it won't really matter at all. But as ever, this show is nothing without you and your views. So let's welcome one of our great British voices. And this is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics that we're discussing. Henry is a property expert from Liverpool. Henry, is the support announced, thank you for joining us, is the support that Rishi Sunak announced good or bad? What do you think? Does it help you and your tenants?
Well, unfortunately, it's a short-term measure, Nana, isn't it? But let's think about this. The rules of the game have now changed. Energy supply security is now a #1 priority. And how do we get energy supply security? The only way this is going to happen is that if we open up North Sea gas, if we begin fracking on a major scale, and #3, the most important thing, is that we have to insulate homes and make that a #1 priority. Because all that's happening is that we are wasting vast amounts of energy. And another simple thing for anybody listening to this, if you want to reduce your CO2 emissions, stop buying everything from China, because they're the biggest polluter on the planet. We account for maybe 1 or 2% of emissions. So why should we have to have all this pain when we are not the major polluter. China and India are the countries we should be targeting.
Well, Henry, a lot of people would agree with you. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, and of course, you could be a great British voice as well. Now, today, we're asking, should the government have introduced a windfall tax on the profits of oil and gas companies? And lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Cynthia says, I don't understand why this wasn't the government's first move. It just seems obvious. Ian says it's a shame Shell has profited so much when so many small companies are going out of business. Max says no, there should not be a windfall tax. We need more gas from our own territory, not less. And taxation like this will discourage long-term investment. Liz says more gas from our own territory means cheaper gas. A windfall tax would punish all those pensioners who live off the dividends, that they are being punished enough already. Andy says any special tax on oil companies would be bad. The companies have had a tough time and it's not appropriate to have smash and grab. Yeah, but they've got 20 billion, though, haven't they? Well, I mean, seriously, it's a big topic. It will continue. Keep your thoughts coming. But let's move on now to a topic close to my heart, and it's the continued discussions over the safety of smart motorways. You may remember last month the government announced it was halting the expansion of them over safety concerns. But just this week, they're in the news again. And it was announced that National Highways won't face a corporate manslaughter charge over the death of a woman on a smart motorway. Nargis Begum died on the M1 in South Yorkshire when another vehicle hit her car as she climbed out to get help. South Yorkshire police say that National Highways can't be held liable for the offence because the organisation did not owe road users a relevant duty of care under the terms set out in the Corporate Manslaughter and Corporate Homicide Act of 2007. The force confirmed that the investigation into the offence has now ended. So joining me in the studio to talk more about this is former roads policing officer Mike Rawson. Mike, thank you so much for coming in to talk to me. Mike, is this yet more evidence of safety concerns of these smart motorways?
Yes, we're very disappointed in the CPS decision on this for two reasons. Firstly, because the families of those who have died through this specific policy of removing the hard shoulder, and they haven't got justice. And the second, which disappoints me, is if we could get a successful conviction, the government would not convert any more conventional motorways to smart and hopefully begin a programme of reinstatement of hard shoulders between the bridges on the motorways.
See, Mike, what concerns me mostly about this is that underneath an act, so a 2007 act, they're using this to say that they don't owe a duty of care. Now, I would have thought that that is exactly what they owe us, seeing as we are funding National Highways, and they are a body that we as a community own in a sense. And it doesn't really make much sense to me. So they owe us, I believe, a duty of care.
It's really peculiar, isn't it? This is a company fully owned by the taxpayers of this country. We pay their salaries, we pay their expenses and their pensions. And they come up with a policy that's managed to kill approximately 40 or so people due specifically to the policy. And I have correspondence from Highways England, and they admit in the letter that these smart motorways with no hard shoulders are not as safe as motorways with hard shoulders.
Well, I mean, of course, I haven't seen those letters, so I you know, obviously that is a statement that only you could verify. I can't really verify that at all. But what is concerning is the attitude, firstly. But secondly, there isn't, in my eyes, enough sort of data for them to... I think that's what they're using, aren't they? They're using the fact that there aren't that many deaths because there aren't enough of those motorways to actually be proportionately representative of the number of deaths on normal motorways. So it's very difficult. It's easy for them to use that as an excuse. What is their excuse? Why are they saying that these are safer?
Well, they took the readings of the data from 2015 to 2019, and that showed a slight reduction in fatalities. But then when you look at 2019 by itself, there's a quite an increase. And what basically, they're not fiddling the figures as such, but let me give you an example. The government claims, and so does the Transport Committee, that hard shoulders are dangerous, that people die on hard shoulders. Yes, sadly, I have dealt with a couple of fatalities on a hard shoulder during my service. But first of all, I think that they are confusing these dynamic motorways where sometimes the motorway, the hard shoulder is a hard shoulder and you mustn't drive on it. And then at other times, they switch it and it's a live lane, and that can lead to confusion.
Of course.
And sometimes people have died on the hard shoulder when it was closed to traffic, but a driver's got it wrong. And I would ask this one simple question. If you had to break down on a motorway, would you rather be on the relative safety of a hard shoulder, or would you be happy in a live lane used by 40-ton trucks travelling at 56 miles an hour?
And actually, Mike, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
My
I really
pleasure.
appreciate that. That's Mike Rawson. He's the former roads and policing officer in South Yorkshire Police. So in a statement from the South Yorkshire Police following its investigation, Assistant Chief Constable Sarah Pullman said, having considered the CPS advice, we've concluded that in the circumstances, Highways England cannot be held liable for the offence of corporate manslaughter. This is because in legal terms, the organisation did not owe road users a relevant duty of care under the terms set out in the Corporate Manslaughter and Corporate Homicide Act. I regret that South Yorkshire Police is unable to provide all the answers that families and campaigners are looking for. However, I can assure them that a thorough and comprehensive report comprising our findings and all of the materials we have gathered during our scoping exercise is now being completed. It's now time for our quick-fire debates, the part of the show where we have rapid discussions on some of the other stories making the headlines today. On my panel, broadcaster Danny Kelly and also former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. And I've got my trusty buzzer with me. I shall buzz it now. And when I press that, my panel need to be quiet and move on to the next topic. Did you say something before I said it? Come on, it's in your mind. We start with this one. It's the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and one wholesaler who's trying to make the most of memorabilia. A spelling mistake on thousands of pieces of Platinum Jubilee merchandising called it the Platinum Jubilee, and it's proving a challenge for the seller. So, would you buy this as a souvenir, Danny?
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at whoever just sort of checked that off to say, OK, go to print. I mean, I'd buy one as a souvenir because it's a novelty, isn't it? Ironically, history tells us that when there are tiny little misprints on things like stamps, first edition stamps or coins, then they're actually worth more.
Sorry, as soon as you started talking about stamps, stamp collecting, it's horrible.
No, because I don't have room for things in my house, more souvenirs and things for the cat to knock off. So no, that's not for me, but I do find it quite funny that someone let that spelling mistake go.
Exactly. Souvenirs, party tricks, name the movie. Hot Shots Part 2. Right, let's see. New Everton manager Frank Lampard could implement a strict fine whilst a fine list of players, including a £20,000 penalty for being late for training sessions. So it's basically fines for all different things, and one of those is being late. So during his first season as Chelsea head coach, a printed list was leaked online with Lampard's signature clearly visible at the bottom, and the total list of fines came to £53,000, with players punished for wearing the wrong kit and arriving late for training. So is this fair? Is it fair, Claire?
Yes. Yes, it absolutely is.
£53,000.
Yes, they need to turn up on time. You're employed to do a job, you're told to be somewhere at a certain time, looking in a certain way, then you do it.
Danny.
I was hanging on every word you were saying then. I thought you were far too premature, Nana. It's £20,000 for being late. And I think if you are continuously late, then you have casual contempt for the person you're...
Thank you. Right, let's move on. Online searches, I had to get this one in. Online searches for men's lingerie on eBay have increased by 60% in the past month. It's been called the lingerie effect, and it started after pregnant pop star Rihanna launched a new range of male lingerie for her Savage X Fenty brand. It's a tight mesh underwear with a crop top for men. We've got one on the screen. If you're there listening online or on radio, you can visualise a little crop top with Well, it's a crop top with tight arms. It's like a vest in red. Danny, would you wear something like
It's
that?
not just tight arms, it's a tight arse. No, I wouldn't, although I was asked to actually model this for you. I was asked.
Can you imagine?
But only if we mentioned liposuction earlier on the show, only if I could have two gallons of fat hoovered out of me at a pharmacy.
Oh, I want to know, who are these men that are searching for lingerie for themselves online? I mean, that's got to be a very specific search on their internet history, and I'm not buying it.
She's not buying it, they're not buying it. So on today's show, we've been asking, are the Downing Street resignations the end for Boris Johnson? And according to our Twitter poll, 73% of you say no. The resignations will not be the end of Boris. Also, we've been discussing whether there should be a windfall tax on oil and gas companies, and so many of you have been getting in touch. Carol says, thank you for highlighting this injustice against the public who have suffered enough of this pandemic. Shell's £4.7 billion profit margin is too much. Clyde says, get fracking, end of, leave it just well, I read that properly. Leave it to our scientists to sort out removing carbon emissions before 2025, which they could. Listen, I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel, Claire Pearsall. Thank you so much, Claire, and also Danny Kelly joining me today. And thank you so much at home for your company. I'll be back tomorrow at 4. I'll leave you with the weather.
Hello again. It's going to be a windy weekend for all, and for summer, a wintry weekend, particularly in Scotland, where we will see further snow showers. Elsewhere, we're more likely to see outbreaks of rain. This weather front introduced the colder air that you've probably noticed through the day today. More weather fronts are approaching. They will spread outbreaks of rain across the country tomorrow. But in between, many places becoming dry overnight. We do still have snow showers coming into western Scotland. However, the snow could build up here over some of the higher routes and potentially cause a little bit of disruption. The snow showers will ease across the hills of northwest England, Wales and Northern Ireland as outbreaks of rain trickle back into here and western Scotland by dawn. Temperatures dropping close to freezing, but there's enough of a wind to stop those temperatures falling too far. Certainly a touch of frost likely, though, in rural areas, but a dry and a bright start for much of the Midlands, southern England, sunny spells here, but grey and damp for northwest England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, with some more snow here, even to lower levels for a time. That rain will be heavy as it pushes into northwest England, North Wales during the afternoon, patchy rain over the Midlands by the end of the day. Some rain in Edinburgh for the Calcutta Cup. It should be easing off by the time we get to kick-off. But across northern Scotland, we will see snow showers returning here and, again, likely to cause some disruption as they last through Saturday night and Sunday. A Met Office yellow warning in place here. Elsewhere, further south, mostly outbreaks of rain that we see, keeping the temperatures up through Saturday night and Sunday, but making for a very different day across the south. Certainly early on, dull and damp. That rain tending to peak